Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. In one of my older previous tutorials, we created a relationship system where you could walk up to NPCs, harass them over dialogue, do nice things, do quests for them, and they'd begin to like you, and then you unlocked more options. It's a very common thing in games like Sims, Fable, Dragon Age. All sorts of games have relationships with NPCs. You may not actually do anything with it. You could also advance it. So in games like Fable, you could push it to the point where you'd be in a relationship. Or in GTA, you could start off just a mild dating, and then you get all the way to getting that hot coffee. So in today's tutorial, we're going to revamp that relationship system and add a bunch more things to it for my new game. We're going to look at adding all sorts of stuff in this series for basic relationships. We'll add buffs, so if you attack somebody, they'll temporarily hate you just on a temporary basis until they get over it, or if you kill one of their family members, they'll permanently hate you. Or you could make it so your parents permanently love you. Stuff like that. And then we're going to advance it in a few later tutorials where we're going to start adding mini games in so you can actually start going on dates and stuff like that. So let's get started. So I've already set myself up a demo map to come into, which is going to be useful for us to easily jump in and out of it without having to wait for a while. And the first thing I'm going to do is come and open up my game instance, so GI main. If you don't have a game instance, just simply come down into your content drawer, right-click Blueprint Class, search for game instance, then go to Edit, Project Settings, and just make sure you set it on Maps and Modes at the bottom. You may already have one, that's totally okay. The reason we're going to be using the game instance is because it stays in the game when you jump through different levels. So if you go into a dungeon, you don't have to worry about reloading your relationships. It's all there. So as per normal, I've given this system a good think to make it very optimized. And I was torn between putting the relationships on each individual NPC, as you might think is a common practice, versus storing it in one place. And I've opted to store it in one place for a few reasons. Firstly, if we put it on each individual NPC, what are your relationships? Whilst that works, and it will be very lightweight, so if we have 100 NPCs and they go into a dungeon so they're not rendered anymore, you won't have to know their relationships. But you will have to double up every relationship shared with them. So for example, if the player and the king hate each other, you will have to store that on both characters so you know that they both hate each other. So it's a double of data, which means you've also got to do double the amount of work to update it. And then you run into the issue that if they ever come out of sync, what do? So if the king says he hates you, but the player says he likes the king, it runs into a lot of issues. And secondly, if you ever wanted to query a relationship from far away, so say if you hated the king, but you are doing a faction for one of the king's guards, then you kind of need to know about that relationship. So that's why we're going to store it in one place instead, and that's on the game instance. So it'll always be loaded, it's going to be super lightweight, so it's not going to be storing that much data anyway. So now that we've discussed what we're doing, let's start creating the struct then. So I'm going to come into my blueprints folder, and inside my structures folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it relationships. And inside here, I'm going to create a new blueprint structure, and I'll call it s_relation, and I'll open it up. The first thing I'm going to put in here is character 1, and then I'll set this to a type of name. Now you can really set this type to whatever fits your game the best. So in my case, I don't have a central NPC manager at the moment or anything like that. I really do need to get around to doing it. However, some of you might, if you use, for example, Narrative Pro, it has an NPC subsystem, so you could just put the NPC definition in here. I don't have anything, so I'm just going to use gameplay tags, because that's what I currently use on my characters to activate their dialogue anyway. They will have a gameplay tag on them. So I'm also going to come and add character 2. And the reason I'm calling it character is because it could be the NPC, it could be the player. And then the final one I'll add in is the value, and that'll be a type of integer. One little tip to make this a bit nicer, I'm going to drop down the value, and I'm going to come and tick save game, and I'm going to set the value range to be the range that I want it to be for these characters. So for example, I'm going to set mine, like I've done with the old tutorial, from -100 to 100. 100 is you're married, you're happy life kind of thing. 80 is they are as strong as they can be without being lovers. So that's what it is. So like brothers or really, really strong allies. And then it goes down to 50 is in you're all right. 25 is okay, you've done some friendly tasks. 0 is I don't know you. And then it goes all the way to the negative. So it's 25 is I kind of you're irritating. 50 is go away. 75 and 80 is more like I don't want anything to do with you. And then 100 plus is I'm going to kill you. I'm going to attack you when you come up to me, that kind of thing. So I'm going to set mine to -100 and 100. But you can set yours to anything you want. 0 to 100 works as well. And I'm also going to set the slider range to the same thing. Now you might wonder what these properties are. And if you've seen my YouTube short, you'll know exactly what they're for. But what this means now that we've completed our struct is if I come into the defaults, the value has a slider look. So I can't set this to anything like 300 that will break the game, which is perfect to make things work. It doesn't affect the game at all. It's just an editor change that makes it just that little bit nicer. So now let's jump back to our game instance, and I'm going to create a new variable called relationship. And if you've watched my previous factions tutorial, where we created a faction system, that is different to the faction relationships and the relationship. Faction relationships are entire groups of people. So like the entire bandits or an entire elven race can hate or dislike you kind of thing, depending what you do. The relationships are per character. So for the vast majority of it, you're not going to care if the soldier who you've just attacked is in your relationships. But for key characters, that's what this system's. So I'll come and set this to our new S relationship struct. And I'll just categorize it inside the same relationships folder category. It just makes it a bit neater. I'll turn this into an array and I'll hit compile and save. And now we need to create some functions that we can actually add and remove from this relationship. Now we could just come in and create a couple of functions and that would work. However, we want to be able to query this from anywhere in the game. And that means having to cast. And now whilst the game instance is always loaded in memory, we don't want to have to be casting to it every single time. So what I'm actually going to do is I already have an interface on my game instance called BPI game instance. Interfaces are so easy if you've never used them before. We'll guide through it together. So all you do is create a new blueprint interface. So I've already got mine called BPI game instance. Open it up and then create functions in here for what you want it to do. So I want one to come and add relationship. And then what do we want when we add the relationship? Well, we need to have an input to say which character it is. So I'll put character 1. And that'll be a type of whatever you set earlier. For me, it'll be a name. I also want character 2 as another input. That'll be another name. And then I want the value. And I'll set that to an integer. Again, on here, I'm actually going to come and rename this to UpdateRelationship in my case, because add means we also need to have another function called subtract. Whereas if we just do UpdateRelationship, we can just do both in one go. It's nice and easy. What I am also going to do for my version is add an output, and I'm just going to call it new relationship. And that can just export the value of what it is now. So if we pass in -10, because we've just attacked them, that can pass in the new relationship of, say, I don't know, -10 or 40 if we were on 50. And it gives us a live update. I'll add this to a category of relationships. Just makes it a bit easier to use. And then I'll add one more function called GetRelationship. And this will simply output the relationship value. That's all we need for that. We will add 2 inputs of character 1, so we know which character we're looking at. And we'll also do the same for character 2. And now we can hit compile and save. And once you've created your interface like that, you can jump back into your game instance, go to class settings, implemented interfaces, add, and add yours. That's it. Now we can implement the interface that we've just done, so the functions. Jump into your interfaces and you will see relationships. There they are. So let's start with an easy one, the get relationship. So let's open this up. You'll see it's created a function for us that we can now return the relationship value. So inside here, I will drag in our relationships and I'll drag off it and do for each. And then I will break on this And you can see we now have the 2 characters. So what I'm going to do, because we need to be careful, because character 1 and character 1 might be the same and character 2 might be the same, but equally, doing it from a different perspective, character 1 could be character 2 and character 2 could be character 1. So we need to make sure we check both. So what we're going to do is drag off of character 1 and do equals. And we'll say, does character 1 equals get character? And that character 1 here, the little variable, relates to this one here. You can see the little f to say it's a function parameter. Then I'll duplicate this and paste it below. But this time I'll say, does character 2 equal character 2? Like so. And then I can connect both of these together and say and. So that's checking first check. That's checking if character 1 equals character 1, character 2 equals character 2. However, what I'm also going to do is copy this below, and then I'll call it second. And instead, this time, we're going to flip these around, so that'll be character 1, that'll be character 2, but this variable will be character 2, and this one will be character 1 instead. And the reason we're doing it this way instead of ORing on there is if for some reason you pass in the same character to character 1 and 2. If you OR at this and OR at this, then it will pass both places because it is character 1 and it is character 2. That's not going to work. However, if we've done it separately like this, where we check character 1 and 2, unless you physically put a relationship in where it's got the same name, it won't pass, which is why this way works great. And then the only difference is we're going to come down here and do OR. And then we can add a branch up here like so. So if this is true, then it means it's found either character 1 and character 2, blah, blah. Either way, it's found it. So what I can do is call our return, and we just now need to return the relationship value, which I'm going to make some space over here just to make this a bit nicer. I'll promote this to a local variable, which means it's isolated to this function, and I'll call it current relationship. I'll hold control and connect the loop body to this one, and connect that one back over to down like so. And you'll see, now it's all linked together. We can even make that at the break. It makes it easier over here to drag in the current relationship and then just connect the value. Because now you can see, instead of dragging that value all the way over there, it looks a lot neater. If it's false, we're not going to do anything at the moment because we need to let the for each loop keep checking over. So if we return here, we're all good, we found it. However, if we come down to completed, it means we have not found it. So what I'm actually going to do is just return 0. So 0 in my game at least is I don't know who you are, I've never heard of you, that kind of thing. A random person on the streets. And that's going to work for me. If you're doing between 0 and 100, 0 is they hate you, set it to 50 or whatever your value is. Otherwise, feel free to just automatically add them. That could be something you could do. So if they don't exist, you just call UpdateRelationship and add them in. I don't need that. So that's our GetRelationship done. Now let's jump into the UpdateRelationship, where we're going to be doing it a little bit different. So I am actually going to come and copy the most of this, because it does a lot of what we need, but we are going to heavily change it. So I'll come back into UpdateRelationship and I'll paste it in. I'll connect it up. So we still want to loop over everything, because the first thing we want to do is try to find it. And I'll still have a local variable called current relationship. And then you'll see the variables are just going to have to be remapped, which is okay. So we'll do get character 1, and then we'll delete this one and do get character 2, just like that. And then we can just do the exact same thing down here, but reversing it so it does the proper check. And then we don't need this anymore. So if it loops over them and it finds it as true, then we know we've found the relationship we need to update. I'm going to drag all of this across a little bit to give us a bit of space, and I'm actually going to promote the array index to a local variable called current. This will be used to tell us which array item we update inside the relationships array. So if it's true, then we can successfully update it. So I'm going to get the current relationship. I'll drag off and do set members. Up here, I will come and tick the value and connect it to the true. I'll do a break of this, do a plus on the value like so. I'll connect that plus value up into our new value to set it inside the struct. And then here, I will just add on our get value, which is our function variable. Now, don't worry if you're passing -15 to that. If you have a number and you plus a negative number onto it, it will take it down. So you see, if I have a calculator, if I do my current relationship is 50 and I add to it minus 15, it will go to 35 because it will successfully take it down. That also works if I have 10 and I add on to it minus 50, we go into the negatives. And then equally, if I have a negative of plus 40, I add on 60, it goes back into positives. So the plus does plus and minus for us, as long as you pass in a negative number. And then finally, once we've done that, we need to update the relationships. So I'll drag the relationships in, I'll drag off and do array element, so lm. I'll connect it up. The new struct we want to do is our struct out. We want the size to fit because we're changing its size in some cases. And then the index is our new current index. And that's all good. So this is the updating a relationship. So that's if we already have a past relationship with them. If it's false, we're not going to do anything because it's searching. However, if it comes to here, then we need to actually add them in because they don't exist currently. So what I'm going to do is disconnect the completed. I will get the relationships here. I'll drag off and do add. Then I will drag backwards off of this blue token, our struct, and do make. And now it can populate it with what we need. So we can drag in character 1 for the first one. We can do get character 2 for the second one. And then for the value, we're already passing in a value. It very well may be 0, but we can do, which will be our function. And then we can connect that to the completed. And then for the new relationship, we can just pass in the same value because that's what we've set it to. We can comment this with add new relationship. But one thing I have missed is just up here. After we find them, we don't need to do anything else. So I'm going to drag off this and do return. I will make sure to get the current relationship again, break on it, and pass in the new value because we need to return what the new relationship is. And for the most part, ladies and gentlemen, that's the framework set up, at least the basic one. In the next tutorial, we are going to look at adding buffs to it, so some values are permanently affected, but that's going to be a bit long for this video. So let's give it a test and start actually using it. So I'm going to come to my player pawn, and we'll add some debug keys in to toggle it. So let's come and add some commands, console commands that we can type in to actually trigger it. So if you didn't see my previous cheat manager tutorial, we've set up a console cheat manager, it's called in Unreal. It's badly named, but it's a cheat class here where you can put in custom console commands. So I've just got 2 at the moment, but let's add another one called GetRelationship. And then I will pass in the 2 character names. So we'll do character 1, there'll be a name, and I'll do character 2, and it'll be a name as well. If you don't have this cheat manager thing, it's super easy to set up. All you do is create a new blueprint class, type of cheat manager, and then in your player controller, just set it in the cheat class there. That's it. And then all you have to do is create a function, pass in your arguments, and make sure to tick exec. So it can exec, so you can activate it from consoles. And then we've got our 2 characters. How do we do it? So I'm going to right click and do get game instance. We don't need to caster it because we've already set our interface up so it's nice and smooth. We can just do get relationships. We can pass in our 2 character names, and then it doesn't matter which order we put it in, it will print out the relationship if. I'm going to drag off of this and do print text because I'm beginning to really enjoy the text more. I'll drag backwards and do format text. Then in curly braces, you'll put a variable. So I'll put char1, close curly brace, and curly brace char2 are at value. And you can see, because I put it in curly braces, it's put the values down here. So I can connect the value, char1, and the char. So if we play the game now and just type get relationship and type our 2 characters in, well, it's not going to do anything, really, because they don't exist. But let's try it anyway. So I'll press the tilde key and do get relationship. You can see it's popped up. I'll press tab. I'll say player and Bob. And I'll press enter. And it'll say player and Bob are at 0. Because they don't know each other, which is perfect. So if I come into my game instance, my relationships, I'll add a default one. And I'll say the player and Bob are at 50. They're good friends. And if I try it this time, and because Unreal caches its console commands, I can press tilde and press the up arrow key. You can see player and Bob are at 50. Perfect. Our relationship is working. If I test it again, but reverse it, player and Bob, Bob and player, you can see it will still do the same thing. But if I type a random name, it will not find it. It will say 0, which is perfect. If you want it to print out that you don't know this person, you can easily just adapt the GetRelationship here to print something else. Maybe add an extra output saying, do they exist? And then you can use it. For me, I don't need that. So let's actually change the relationships in here as well. So I'll add another function. So I'll duplicate this GetRelationship and I'll just do UpdateRelationship. I'll pass in the 2 characters, but I'll also pass in a value and it'll be an integer. Instead of GetRelationship, I will simply do UpdateRelationship and we can connect it all up just like we did before. It's looking a bit messy in here, but this is just for dev stuff. The new relationship I'll pass in and I'll connect it across like that so it returns it out for us, which is exactly why we made it now at there, so we can tell it's updated. So if I run it this time, player and Bob, what are you at? So you're at 50. So I'm going to say, you know, I've just married Bob's sister. Sure. We'll do UpdateRelationship and we'll say player, Bob. Make sure you put spaces and we will say 20. Player and Bob are now at 70. We have officially got really friendly with Bob. But oh no, things happened and we also slept with Bob's mother. So we're going to do -100. He's really annoyed. And you can see he's now at -30. He's lost all our friendship and he's gone into, I don't like you. Perfect. So there are many, many ways you can implement this into your game, and it entirely depends on what your game is. So in the previous tutorial, we did actually add it to the dialogue, so you could go in, you could talk to them, and it'd say different things. And it entirely depends where you place it. So for example, if you use a quest or dialogue system, if you're using dialogue, you can add conditions to say things if you're at a certain level with them, or not say anything at all if they hate you, which is something we will look into adding in the next tutorial when we have the buff system. You could also do it for quests. Or if, like in Skyrim, if you come and steal some of Bob's stuff from behind his back and he catches you, it can have a negative relationship on you. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. There is the updated relationship system, part 1. In part 2, we are going to look at adding the buff system, so we can specifically say why people don't like you, only for a temporary measure. You may not want this all the time, so for example, if you go and attack Bob, he might just not like you. However, if you steal from him, you may want his buff to be there, so eventually he does forgive you. It adds an interesting aspect to the game, where you can really annoy someone for about a day, and then they're suddenly not so annoyed at you. But that's something that I think will be really cool to add into this system. We'll also look into aspects of adding it into quests and dialogue, and adding some nice UI, so when you do update the relationship, it pops up. And so thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got any improvements that you'd like to see in this tutorial, please let me know. Thank you for watching. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.